opening now. That was the plan that we had at the beginning of this year and also the beginning of last year as well. So the big issue on the Davidton line is just the fact that we are waiting for rails to come because the rails have been stolen. And that is not a good story to say, but I can't not tell the truth in this meeting as well. We want to encourage communities that if you see someone stealing a piece of rail, please inform us as Plaza, inform the police. And maybe can I use this opportunity to explain the impact of stealing rails? Because if you steal 1 meter of rail, even if it's a brand new piece of rail, the moment you cut a rail in meters, you can't use it again. Even if we recover it from whoever has stolen it, we can't use it again because rails, when we buy it from overseas, they come in lengths of 60 meters. A rail is 60 meters long. It doesn't have any joints in between. So we want them to come in 60 meters because we want to minimize the number of joints because the joints is where the rails breaks, particularly during the winter season. The joints are the weakest points in the rail system. So we minimize the number of joints in the rails. That's why we buy them in 60-meter lengths. We put a joint, you put another 60-meter length, you put a joint. That's how we minimize the number of rails. In fact, there is a facility in Kimberley where we even, when they come in 60-meter lengths, we lengthen them further to make them 240 meters. So that by the time it goes to the railway line, it goes as a 240-meter length and we only put one joint. And then another 240-meter, another joint. But people who go and cut rails into 1 meter, half a meter, already you can't use it. It's no longer functional. Even if it's brand new, it's a problem for the rail system. So that is the biggest challenge we have on the Davidton line. And also on the Springs line, there's a portion where they've stolen about 20 kilometers of rails. But we are busy procuring rails, just that they are not produced locally. We are importing them from other countries around the world. So that is just a challenge on the Davidton line. The fact that we don't have rails, which we are now procuring from elsewhere. Chairperson, maybe just to go back to the comment of Moses Nagedi, the issue of Naledi. Moses is quite correct. The plan is because of the capacity of the Braamfontein depot, we can only run 2 trains on the Naledi line in the beginning as a start. And we're going to be running the blue trains. And the reason for that is that the Braamfontein yard is vandalized and is not ready to do maintenance for the EMUs. So we want to start with about 4 trains, 2 running trains, and the 2 will then be spares, which will then stage them at the Braamfontein depot. But the plan is, if there is any heavy maintenance that is required on those EMUs, we will still take those trains to Almaden in Pretoria. So you are correct, but we will be ramping that up. That is just the beginning. We call it phase 1. Phase 2 is when we increase the number of trains and then we will recover the other lines. You mentioned that we'll only be using 2 lines. That is correct. But we want to recover the 4 lines so that we can then run more trains. And by that time, we want the Braamfontein depot to be ready to do maintenance, heavy maintenance on the EMUs as well. So that is quite correct. Paul, you are also correct regarding the Vereeniging line. Chairperson, you also emphasized the importance and the criticality of the Vereeniging line. And Vereeniging line, just like the Davidton line, is not as severe as the Davidton line. There are some elements of turnouts which have been stolen, but we are busy working on that. So the Vereeniging will be finished a bit earlier than the Davidton line, just due to the severity and the extent of the damage. But we are working on that as well, the Vereeniging line as well. The issue of security strategy. At the moment, the head of security is working together, like I'm saying, with other SOEs who are affected in the same manner. So we are developing a corporate strategy that affects all the SOEs. And through that strategy, with the involvement of the SAPs and other security agencies, we believe that at some stage we'll be able to win this fight. That is the strategy that is the approach we are currently having as PRASA and what other SOEs are having. But I won't deny the fact that the risk is there. We must manage it and make sure that we don't allow the infrastructure to be exposed again to new vandalism. That we want to try and minimize as much as possible. Paul, Mr. Soto, you said that we are distance. We don't have engagements with our communities. We do have our own stakeholder manager here. Mr. Muleme, I don't know if you want to comment on that, because I thought we are addressing that. Can I allow Mr. Muleme to just comment on the issue of stakeholder engagement?
Thank you, Chair and honorable members. It's correct what Paul is saying. And we've been looking at ways to work with them as UCV so that they can assist us to extend our scope in reaching out to communities, especially including those that are a bit remote from our operating lines. Actually, just outside, we agreed that we need to meet so that we can formalize our memorandum of understanding with them, through which we can then assist them with resources like transport, where we can then have joint engagement to reach out to communities about the services that we offer. We must acknowledge the gap that came as a result of the COVID period as well. But the board has been putting pressure on us to revamp our community engagement. We started doing so with the rollout of the projects that we were having to rehabilitate infrastructure. And that has shown so much interest by communities to work with ourselves. Unfortunately, at this stage, it's only limited to rolling out the rehabilitation infrastructure projects. But beyond recovery of service, we want to work with other community organizations as well, not only UCV, so that we can have a wider reach to communities. By the way, this is not only about Gauteng, it's also about other regions where we providing services as well. And if I may make an example, in Cape Town, we have what we call development forums, which have agreed to work with us in reaching out to communities, because we do acknowledge as PRASA that our engagement has mainly been limited to government, the oversight bodies like portfolio committees in legislatures, and to a limited extent with UCV, because UCV as a voluntary organization also need resources for them to be able to conduct work. But we have committed to renew the MOU that we're having so that we can look at how we assist them to extend our reach. So that's how I'll respond to this, Chairperson, which also talks to the kind of partnerships we need to enter into with various community organizations so that our reach is much wider. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Muleme. Kariso Muleme is our stakeholder manager in PRASA. Thank you for that input. Chair, just one last question that I want to respond to is the issue of the power failure. Someone mentioned that when there are power failures, people are affected. It was Pesine, but that's how I couldn't know. Masango is the same name. Okay. Pesi, for us as PRASA, we are a bit different to other organizations and communities as well. So our current agreement with ESCOM is that the rail infrastructure is not load-shedded. So the rail infrastructure, there's always power available to run the trains. The only reason why there are there's no power on those lines is because the rail system has been vandalized. But where trains are running, Mabopani, Salisville, Pienaarsport, that infrastructure, those lines are never load-shedded. And that will be the case as well when we run the trains in Davidton. So I can't wait for trains to come to Davidton. I think that's something that I'm going to be pushing very hard on, because I want people of Davidton as well. As I'm saying, I do have family members there, so we do have our own people living in Davidton as well. But I'm going to be pushing for that on our side. We are pushing very hard to recover the infrastructure. But we never load-shedded. That's just the response I wanted to give, Chairperson. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Murutla, and thank you very much for the answers to the various questions. I think some of the information that you've shared with us is positive information. obviously, I think we would all be concerned about those lines that are still not operational. Davidton, Itwatwa, Springs, Vereeniging, etc. And so, as I said earlier on, we appreciate always the willingness of PRASA to come and engage with us. We invite you to come as PRASA because we are also taking a keen interest as the Portfolio Committee on Transport and Logistics in the Gauteng Legislature. PRASA may be a national entity, but as far as we're concerned, our priority focus is on the commuters and the welfare of our commuters here in Gauteng. And so we will continue to engage with yourselves, and I can also assure stakeholders here as well, we will arrange another session with PRASA, probably in the latter part of the first quarter of next year, just to get an update. But also, Mr. Murutla, we as a portfolio committee would want to undertake an oversight visit, not because we're trying to take over from the national committee, but just to get a sense and see firsthand the operations, particularly on the Naledi route. We would want to find time to go and have a look at that. We will also go and want to have a look at some of the other lines that are operating or that are under rehabilitation, being fixed, upgraded, etc. So we will be making contact with your officers, our contact in PRASA, just to arrange that. Again, because we take a keen interest in understanding how far PRASA is in getting lines back in operation. But obviously you've heard the impassioned pleas from community members who are here. They want to see the lines running. We've invited here because as a portfolio committee we also want to see these lines back in operation. We want to see commuters being able to travel in an efficient and fast manner, because rail often tends to be efficient, it tends to be fast, and it gets you from one place to the next, generally with few disruptions. And it's also a cost-effective means of traveling, particularly on the longer distance routes. So I think on that note, thank you very much for coming, for meeting with us and interacting with us. We really appreciate it. Maybe a parting shot from you before we go on to the presentation from Tshwane.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Thank you to the committee as well for the invite. I think as PRASA we commit to making ourselves available. In particular, the questions have been asked about the readiness of stations. We are ready to give that update to the committee as well. And we will be available with an update as you want it. Early next year, the update will be made available. We can always share that with you. And also the site visit, we will be ready to show you the work that we have done as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Murutla, and we wish you a pleasant afternoon and the rest of the weekend. If you're wanting to leave, we accept that. We're going to just quickly get a presentation from Tshwane, engagement session, then we are closing. So if you need to leave, we fully understand that. I'm sure the committee section have got all the contact details, especially with Kokiso there, who I used to work with many years ago in Cape Town. But we'll certainly be trying to arrange a visit to one or two of the lines and probably take a trip on one or two of the trains again, like we've done earlier in the year. So thank you very much. On that note, can I then invite Mr. Lekontlane from Tshwane, and we appreciate you coming through, sir, to interact with us on some of the questions that have arisen through some of the engagement sessions we've had with stakeholders. So we really appreciate that. Is the team ready to put your presentation onto the screens? If we can just give them a second to do that. Are we ready, Stembiso? Oh, there we are. All right, over to you, sir. And we all ears and listening to you. Thank you so much. again, for responding to our invite.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Peko Letlonkani. Maybe before I start with my presentation, just to pass greeting to everybody who's in the meeting and all protocol observed. Chair, in terms of the invitation, there were two issues that I needed to respond to. Mainly was the non-operation of Metro Rail line in Hammanskraal, and also the usage of Tshwane Bus Rapid Transit Arieng due to non-operation of subsidized buses. I think these were the issues that were raised at the hotel in Pretoria. Chair, what we did in preparation with that one, it's fortunate that today when I'm supposed to present on this one, there is also representative from PRASA, because in my response, really, it was going to be covering the information that we have actually received from PRASA in terms of their corridor rollout plan, and therefore we're just going to convey a message in terms of when they anticipate to implement the Hammanskraal Pretoria line. I just also want to mention the fact that this has always been an issue in all the consultation meetings that we have attended, or the IDP meetings. The biggest outcry from Hammanskraal is the reintroduction of the Hammanskraal Pretoria line. And in terms of the corridor rollout phasing that information we received from PRASA, it basically indicates that this particular line falls in their phase 3, which is the 2023-26 future expansion. So I just wanted to indicate that even though this was not our key responsibility, we have to interact with PRASA to make sure that we bring back some information, which is almost similar to what the acting group CEO was presenting earlier on. In terms of Mamelodi bus contract or the use of Arieng, Chairperson, I can confirm that in Tshwane, we only operating one line, which was basically as a result of the financial situation that Autopex found themselves in, which basically decided at the time requested to stop the operation in 2017, and as part of the engagement that we had with province at the time, Tshwane had to come in and operate this particular contract. In terms of that contract, really, it's what is called D23, 24, 25, and 26. As I've indicated, these were the services that were initially operated by PATCO. PATCO, 2 years prior to us, they withdrawn their services, and again there was an engagement with Autopex, and Autopex actually then operated the services from 2015 to 2017, and as a result they also decided to withdraw. Chair, I think what is key for us is that why the city basically got involved is the fact that we needed to avoid service interruption to commuters. And as a result, together with province, they were negotiated process in line with the provisions of the National Land Transport Act, which basically allowed. Oh, I should be moving it. Sorry.
No, I think proceed, continue
Okay.
presenting.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, maybe just to repeat the point that I was raising, that we have to come in to avoid service interruption to commuters, and that process basically was negotiated in line with the relevant provision of the National Land Transport Act. Chairperson, during that period, we entered into what is called the Intergovernmental Authorization Agreement with province, where we basically took over the thank you. We basically we entered into that particular intergovernmental authorization agreement with province. Chair, what is key about the intergovernmental authorization agreement was that we basically gave province the authority to continue administering the bus contract within Gauteng and within the jurisdiction of Tshwane. One of the fundamental principle of this particular intergovernmental authorization was that province will continue with the services until such time that the cities or ourselves as city of Tshwane are actually ready. Sorry. No.
Don't worry about the screen, just present. I think that's, otherwise we're going to constantly be interrupted, yeah. Sorry about that, just carry on presenting.
Okay. No, thank you, Chair. I think what I was trying to explain or emphasizing was the importance of cooperative governance that took place between ourselves and provinces and province in relation to that. And what we also wanted to reflect is the fact that in terms of the National Land Transport Act, Section 11 thereof, the contracting authority function or the bus subsidization contract is actually the responsibility of the planning authorities. And in this case, in our case, is City of Tshwane. But because of the state of readiness, we had to enter into this particular intergovernmental authorization agreement where we allowed province to continue with the administering of the contract. What is important is that there is also liaison structures that are actually ensuring that whatever that the province is doing or the work that province is doing is actually shared with the colleagues from the department or the cities. So that is basically one aspect that we really needed to highlight. Chairperson, in relation to the process going forward, if I have to indicate is that as part of this particular process, we have started a process with, again, province and also National Department of Transport, where we are looking at mainly at the integration of services. And one of the identified corridor for integration as a first phase is the Mamelodi bus contract. The reason being is that Mamelodi bus contract is basically running parallel with the mainland Mamelodi BRT extension. So what has happened is that the line 1C and D of Tshwane is basically in process of being finalized, where we are going to be starting an operation from Mamelodi to mainland. So that process, we have been having engagement with province, mainly to ensure that we avoid situation where we are introducing a new service while there is an existing service. And for a mere fact that BRT or TRT is actually the ones running this particular service, we have then started the engagement to ensure that in the process we are going to integrate service and include the Mamelodi bus contract into the BRT. So the process that we are currently in is that we have received a lot of comments from province, but I think in the main they have expressed the need, they have expressed their support to us on a number of conditions, one being that rail should always be the backbone of the integrated Transport Master Plan 2025, and also that we need to avoid a piecemeal approach, and the fact that they are not opposed to PTOC and PTNG integration. Currently, we are receiving a grant which is called the PTNG, which is mainly for BRT infrastructure rollout and operation, and for the Mamelodi bus contract, we are receiving the public transport operational grant, or what is called PTOC. So that is the process where we are, Chairperson. In terms of, I don't know whether it will. Yes. Let me leave it. Chair, I had a map here. I'm sorry that I'm not able to operate this particular.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about
But
that.
the most important aspect in this particular map was basically to show the lines, the BRT lines and also the Mamelodi bus contract. And if you look at them, you will see that they are actually running on top of each other. And in the principle of integration and in the principle of utilizing government funding, we need to make sure that we avoid situation where we're actually double dipping or paying subsidization in almost in the same corridors or on the same line. So your line from for example, Vonneboom to CBD, Vonneboom to CBD to Atteridgeville, also CBD to Centurion, Main Lane, Mamelodi and Mahube. You will see that it is actually where the PTOC or the Mamelodi bus contract is operating. Hence the importance of us going for an approach where we want to make sure that services are integrated and they are operated under one service contract. Chair, we also look into the fact that our current status of operation, there are a number of system constraints in relation to the BRT system, one being the population centers are not served, and also that there are number of meter taxis remain very high, and as part of the implementation of the BRT system, we are actually implementing the BRT system utilizing Section 41B of the National Land Transport Act, which is basically talking to transformation and empowerment of the previously disadvantaged operators. So that is one aspect that we will be putting emphasis on to make sure that as we implement the BRT system, the previously disadvantaged or the informal sector of the public transport system are actually integrated. Chairperson, one other aspect that we also need to highlight to the meeting is the fact that these particular contracts that we are currently negotiating or in the process of implementing with TRT will be for a duration of 12 years, and there is going to be negotiated. And one of the aspects of that is that because they will be committing the municipality beyond 3 years, they will be subjected to a public consultation process through Section 33 of the Municipal Finance Act to make sure that communities in the affected areas are aware of the cost, the duration, and the actual operators that will be operating those particular contracts. I think what is key, Chair, is that the most important aspect is to ensure that as we go along, we don't repeat the mistake that was committed in the past, where services during the course of the contract duration, you have service providers withdrawing. So we need to make sure that as we negotiate the fee per kilometers, it take into consideration all operational aspects. So basically, Chair, from our side, really the important message or the feedback that we needed to provide was that indeed, yes, as the city we did operate, or we are currently even operating a Mamelodi bus contract due to the fact that the current or the then operators were not in a position to operate, and we had to ensure that in our space or in our area of jurisdiction, there's no interruption of services. And currently we're working with all the spheres of government to ensure that PTMG and PTOC integration materialize. So that is basically the message that we wanted to convey to the committee, and also to reflect that this particular contract is operated utilizing 78 buses. There is also an automated fare collection system that is being utilized. And Currently, the contract is also coming to an end on the 23rd or 31st of March next year, and hence the process that we have started, or where province has started with the actual negotiations with the various operators. And I can also confirm to the committee that that engagement between ourselves and province is also taking place to make sure that whatever the outcome of that process is actually endorsed by ourselves. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. You've gone into a lot of detail. You've given us a lot of information, and I think we really appreciate that. Certainly gives us a far better understanding, particularly in relation to some of the questions that were asked previously, but we really appreciate that. Can I check with members of the Portfolio Committee if there are any members that have any questions or inputs in terms of the presentation? I found it quite clear, giving us a lot of detail, but let me check with members. Members are okay. Any of our stakeholder guests that are here? I don't see anybody here. I think most of our guests are not from Tshwane necessarily. But no, I think then on that note, we want to say thank you very much, because I think you've gone into so much detail that there's not much that we can ask. There might be some of the matters you've raised which relate to roads and transport, or transport and logistics in the province. There might be some engagements we might decide to draw out of this and have with them as well. And in fact, when the department, because we're going to have another session where we allow the provincial department to expand on many of the issues that were raised to them as well, where we will have stakeholders coming to that session as well. And I think we might want to ask HOD, given the presentation of Tshwane, there might be some matters you want to expand on to the committee when we have that particular session. But I think, Mr. Lekontlane, thank you so much for giving of your time. And thank you for the detail you've gone into. We really appreciate that, because sometimes it depends, some stakeholders, some departments or some entities, some municipalities may give us very short presentations, but you've gone into a lot of detail, and we really appreciate that. Whoever helped prepare the presentation, passed our thanks to them as well. And sorry there's no questions, but I think it was very clear. And also wish you a good afternoon, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. I think, honourable members, that probably brings us to the close of this particular session. As I indicated earlier, the department has responses they need to give us as well, but we decided that we were to reschedule that for another date before we close this year, so that we can have more of the relevant stakeholders from across the province and in the areas that we're in to be there when the department gives a response. So on that note, members, I want to thank you for being here. I in particular want to thank our stakeholder guests, our guests who've come from different areas. I understand there may have been some slight challenges with the transport. It's matters that we will deal with in terms of the legislature, but we want to say thank you to yourselves for coming through. And I think from the questions that you were asking, particularly to PRASA, I think it probably made it worthwhile coming through and being able to get some of the responses from PRASA. Some of the responses may not have been what you wanted to hear, because some of those details, some of those responses are indicating to a longer process to get some of these lines back into operation. But I think it does give clear timeframes. And as I've said, as a committee, we will continue to engage with PRASA, because not only is it important to yourselves, to commuters in the province, it's important to us as a committee as well. Because as I've said, we take the plight of commuters, the ability and being able to access transport, rail transport in particular, we take it seriously, and we'll continue to engage on those matters on your behalf as a portfolio committee. I also want to thank the HOD who's been with us all day, and some of your team members that are still here. Thank you very much, HOD, and I know you were keen to hear the presentation from PROSA as well, and I guess the presentation from the City of Tshwane as well. So thank you, HOD, to your team. I think the MEC's office is pretty much gone, but to all the others that are here in different capacities, thank you for joining us. Thank you to the committee section for putting together the committee meeting and the various arrangements that go with it. To the team that are doing translation services, thank you to yourselves as well. We appreciate you and the work that you do, and the team that put all the equipment together, the screens, the microphones. Thank you to all of you as well. And I think on that note, I would then want to adjourn this committee meeting. To committee members, remember we meet again next Friday. Details will be made available closer to the time of the venue, etc. But may I wish everybody a pleasant afternoon, have a good weekend, and wherever you go, make sure you arrive alive and arrive safely. Thank you very much.